Welcome everybody to the Cover 2 podcast, live on a beautiful Wednesday morning here, 9 a.m. start like usually here on OC Rock Radio. This is the Cover 2 podcast. I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And we have a great show for you like we usually do. We're going to start the show with college football, but there's just a lot to talk about. It's coming down to the very end. This coming weekend is the last weekend of college football like we normally know it. Then we get into bowl season, of course, after that in a couple weeks. Later in the show, though, we're going to be analyzing, of course, some of the NFL action, a lot of interesting Thanksgiving games. Your Cowboys got a big win, and the Saints kept rolling, and there's a couple other things we want to talk about. And a little later in the show, we'll jump into a couple of NBA stories I wanted to get Jared's a gauge on and see what he thinks about certain teams here in Southern California. So, nonetheless, though, we're starting the show off with some college football. Jared, we have about 6 teams left, and there's 4 spots, so you could call it a mayhem. Of course, we have Alabama and Clemson as the bell cows in college football, number 1 and 2. Don't really see them losing coming up, but Alabama does have a tough game. Notre Dame gets that big final win, although they don't have a conference championship. I think the way the committee voted them in, they're probably locked in. And, of course, the 4th spot is going to be battled between Georgia, Oklahoma, and Ohio State, who got a giant win over Michigan. I want to start with the podcast talking about Ohio State and Michigan. Jared, what were your first thoughts on that game? Why did that end up being a blowout? Why did Ohio State end up scoring 62 points?
Ooh, 62?
Yeah.
I think I predicted correctly that Ohio State would win the game, but 62 points, I did not see that coming. You know what? I'm not discrediting what Ohio State did. But at this point, I have to say that a Jim Harbaugh-led Michigan team just cannot get the job done in big-time games. I mean, I probably said that same thing last week before this game actually happened. It's just Michigan, came into this game on a really hot streak. They won, 10 games in a row after their opening loss at the beginning of the year to Notre Dame. But we were all kind of saying that's okay as long as they beat Ohio State, then that first loss does not matter. And Michigan had like a top 5, top 10 their defense was solid, and they come out and just kind of get shellacked.
Yeah,
and
killed.
The thing is, Michigan's offense is not set up to score 40, 50, 60 points a game. They're not the spread offense where they just throw the ball around. They like to be a controlled pace. They like to run the ball, right, and kind of wear you down. And they can score points. But if you need them to score, you're down 14 points in the 4th quarter and you need them to get 2 quick touchdowns, that's just not really their MO. So, unfortunately for Michigan, they kind of fell behind the 8 ball a little bit and they just weren't able to catch up. And then things started to snowball. So, it's I don't know, man. I just don't know what to say. It's like Michigan looks good, and then they let you down, and now going 1-15, 1-16, and since 2000.
Well, remember that? Yeah, remember that stat I told you earlier in the year. Michigan, I think it was against top 25 teams. Harbaugh had never won a game on the road, and I think he finally won one at Michigan State, right? Well, the statistic now, people changed it to make him look bad. And now if you look at it, it's top 20 teams on the road. He's still 0-9. So that one win against Michigan State, and Michigan State ended up being, kind of trash. They ended up losing to lowly Nebraska this year. So that win kind of takes it. Man, I'll tell you this, I was absolutely wrong this weekend. I remember I told you, I said, I think 2 things end. I think Washington State's losing streak versus Washington ends, and I think Michigan comes over the top. Why was I completely wrong about both? Now, in Washington State's case, they're a passing offense and they had to play in a blizzard. So that game, hard to analyze in a way, but they end up losing to Washington again. So I'm not taking any credit away from Chris Peterson and the Huskies. But in that game, that's a weird weather game, and based on Washington State's style of play, that's hard to win a game when there's snow hitting the ball when you're throwing it in the air. Okay, I'm just saying. This Ohio State-Michigan thing, this is just Michigan not being able to get it done once again. And it's extremely disappointing if you're a Wolverine fan. But if you're an Ohio State fan, you gave your chance to get to the Final Four. Now, interestingly enough, Ohio State is only ranked number 6, which means the committee believes Oklahoma is the better team. And now we can discuss this. Just looking at these two teams, because obviously I think we have the top three are kind of set. We probably more than likely believe those three teams will win and get in. And then you have 4, 5, and 6. But I want to talk about 4, 5, and 6 real quick. The committee is pretty much saying that Oklahoma has to lose, pretty much, for Ohio State to get in. Is that what you believe too, or do you think there's a way Ohio State can get in, even with an Oklahoma win over Texas?
See, this is... I can argue both sides, right? So if we want to sit here and argue, and I know that's maybe not what people want to hear. People want to hear one or the other, right? I'm teetering back and forth because I really don't know. And because I don't know, I think that's why they should be 5 and 6, and I'm hoping that there are no upsets because I don't really want to see Oklahoma or Ohio State in this playoff.
Okay.
I'm sorry. They've been, unfortunately, too inconsistent, and even though they both have one loss, those losses obviously mean something. For Oklahoma, maybe not as much because they only had a 3-point loss to Texas in the Red Rivalry shootout, right? The problem is, throughout the season, Oklahoma's defense has been so god-awful
it's the whole Big 12.
They can't stop a nosebleed. They give up 40, 50 points constantly, and because their offense is so great, that has overshadowed their poor defense. So, yes, Oklahoma has a lot of talent, but their defense, I don't think, can stop anyone in the top 10, right? Regardless of just talking about the top 3. So, from that standpoint, I'm like, okay, Oklahoma, if they get into a game, they're going to have to score 60 because they're going to give up 59.
Well, they're going to have to play Alabama.
Exactly.
Too.
Right. And that's just not going to be pretty. I mean, Alabama's going to be able to score at will. Oklahoma is going to have to fight tooth and nail to be able to score because we know how good Alabama's defense is. So it's like I'm teetering back and forth again. If I want to make the argument for Ohio State, they are a little more of a roller coaster as far as the talent that this team has had. Obviously, the first 3 games of the year, they don't have Urban Meyer, so there's a little difference there, right? And trying to deal with the assistant head coach and all that stuff. And then you come out and you lose to Purdue in a very, very bad way, right? They lost by like over 20.
It was like 29.
Yeah, that one still stings a little bit for me. So they made up for it a little bit by the big time win against Michigan this past week. But I'm still looking at that Purdue loss saying, what happened? Like, how do you guys let that game slip? Because Purdue is not a good football team.
Well, by that much, that's the one stain on this too. Because upsets happen. I remember Syracuse beat Clemson a couple years ago. When you're on the road and a team is just really up to play you, sometimes you can get beat by a touchdown or a field goal, right? Not 4 touchdowns,
no.
Right? Like something went wrong there where the team quit. And I actually like these rankings from the college football playoff because you obviously have the top 3. And then you have Georgia, who pretty much plays an elimination game, a play-in game versus Alabama. If they win, they're in. And then you have Oklahoma, whose loss was to Texas, who's been ranked. And you have Ohio State, whose loss was a huge one to Purdue. In some cases, Michigan, although they did lose to Ohio State, has a very similar case to get into the Big Ten or to get into the Final Four. Michigan losing a close one to Notre Dame, who's number 3, and then of course losing to Ohio State. But that actually still looks better than Ohio State losing to Purdue by 29. I would literally almost put Michigan over Ohio State. Like that. That's the way you look at it, right? And then of course you have UCF. But so I like the way these rankings are put out. The one way I can see Ohio State jump in, because I don't think Georgia can beat Alabama. And so I think this is pretty much Ohio State or Oklahoma is going to be that 4th team, right? The way Ohio State can get in to the Final Four over Oklahoma, and I've seen crazier things happen in these Final Four rankings, is if Ohio State just goes out and just bludgeons Northwestern like they did Michigan, beats the crap out of them. I think it was the Cardell Jones year where Ohio State went out and they beat up, God, who was it? Who did they beat up the year? They beat somebody like 50 to, it was Iowa, right? They beat them like 50 to nothing or something like that, and then they ended up winning the national championship and being like the 4th seed. They actually vaulted them in. I think that can happen again if Oklahoma gets in one of these crazy 60-57 shootouts with Texas, because Texas ain't a team that can score a lot. Okay? And I think you're right. You see Texas in a lot of these games has low-scoring games, and then the one game they play Oklahoma, it's 50-47. And the one time West Virginia plays Oklahoma, it's 60. It's like, you're right. These Oklahoma games are becoming who has the ball last, not who's the better team. I mean, we saw a crazy game in the way of LSU and Texas A&M last week that went to 7 OTs. There's no winner in that. It's just who had the ball last, right? I mean, everybody's tired. It's like 12 o'clock at night in Texas, right? Like, nobody cares anymore. This is kind of what I see in these Oklahoma games, is that it's just a crapshoot and whoever has the ball last. I think Ohio State with a big win over Northwestern and an Oklahoma non-blowout, I think that's how Ohio State jumps over. Now, if Georgia wins, I think you can agree with me on this, the Final Four is set. Because Alabama ain't getting knocked out of the Final Four no matter what. But Georgia would vault probably number one, and then you'd have these 4 teams. So for these, and for anybody, they want Georgia to lose because then they have a chance. But if Georgia wins, then this all doesn't matter.
Oh, right. Yeah. What if now? I have to ask this question. Whether I know it sounds stupid and nothing so far during this season. No, nothing so far during this season has shown that this will ever happen. But is there a chance that Georgia? I can't even believe I'm asking this. That Georgia blows out Alabama, and Alabama, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Are you? I mean, is that like? I'm not. I don't ever wish injuries on anyone, but Tua gets injured, and Jalen Hurts comes in, and he is not able to score the points that Alabama is normally used to scoring this year. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, Georgia gets on. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, what?
I get you.
Fluky like that happens. Does the committee seriously take Alabama out, or is it like, listen, Alabama gets a pass regardless just because of how good they play?
No, I think you can have one bad game and still get into the Final Four.
Okay.
Now, one bad game against a ranked team. With Ohio State's case, that's Purdue, who what are they 6-6 this year or something like that? At best 7-5. So they're a pretty average team. It's likely losing to like USC this year, right? It's not very good. So anything can happen. But the way Alabama is played, they are a second half team, so I don't really see them getting blown out. I could see them getting blown out in the first half, but they always seem to make adjustments, like Nick Saban has always made them, and they would get close. I actually don't see a blowout happening. It's like a 95% chance that doesn't happen. But you never know, because Georgia is the one team that I think this year could beat them. So you beat them by 21 or something like that. I don't know. But I still think we're looking at this. Bama, you look at their schedule and who they beat. LSU was, let's say they win this game this weekend. They're number 7, right? They're number 7 or 8 in the rankings, and they beat them 29-0. That almost already there is like a way to get in. Like that just one win, and then countless just blowout wins over Ole Miss and Tennessee and all these teams. I think Alabama's in no matter what, barring, you're right, a 42-point loss or something crazy like that, where you'd really have to think about, how good is Alabama? But that's talk that just, UCF is out. They have no chance, obviously. Let's say even if they go beat Memphis 70-0 this weekend, you see them having no chance?
No, not at all. After you lose your starting quarterback.
Now let's say this. So let's go crazy here. All right, Jay, we're gonna get a little crazy on the Coverage 2 podcast. Let's say Georgia loses to Alabama, right? Let's say Oklahoma loses to Texas, and let's say Ohio State loses to Northwestern, right? Does UCF make the Final Four?
No,
do they jump? So you're saying Michigan still gets in even if?
Yeah, Michigan. I saw yesterday.
I think at that point Georgia would still get in.
0.2 chance of getting in.
You're saying UCF or Michigan?
Michigan had a 0.2 chance of getting in. If that scenario happened, then yeah, I think
UCF would win a conference championship game. But here's the thing: you look at it because conference championship game. I know it's Memphis, and Memphis they had Anthony Miller last year. They had other guys last year. They were better. They're not as good this year. UCF plays them. Let's just say they blow them the hell out. Right now, we know they lost their quarterback, so the committee might be thinking that in the back of your head. But if a team proves they can use backup quarterback to win, we've seen that in the past. But that I think would already vote them over Michigan in a way. And then these three, so what are you saying? Georgia just stays in? Because that's what I'm saying. You got to give me an answer why UCF shouldn't get in, because I want them to be in so bad. They're the national champions, man. You gotta have national champions, redeem their title.
In the American Conference?
Yeah. Can you imagine if they played Alabama and they actually got their redemption, like the team that actually won the national championship? That'd be a great story, right?
Yeah, if you're dreaming, I mean, it's just...
it's like thinking the Cardinals are going to make playoffs, right?
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't even want to put this Central Florida team up against Alabama. It just wouldn't even be...
that would be so bad, yeah. Without their quarterback. I mean, if they have Mackenzie Melton, or Milton McKenzie, what's his name? I can't remember. It doesn't matter that much. But, he broke his leg or whatever last game, so he's definitely not playing. But, I don't know. I think... obviously these teams need to schedule better. We've talked about this in the past. But I think if you have, 2-loss team in Georgia, 2-loss team in Oklahoma losing to the same team twice, not having a good defense, 2-loss Ohio State team, 2-loss Michigan team without a conference championship, and then you have undefeated UCF, what do you, you're telling schools, okay, you guys literally have to schedule, number one if you want to get in. I think that causes a message. Now, this is not going to happen. I mean, we're talking about this for no reason, but still,
okay. So you would put Central
I would
Florida
put them in only because you tell people, hey, we're not going to put 2-loss teams over an undefeated team that has literally been undefeated for 2 years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I think UCF is the one team in this rare case that would actually earn a Final Four ranking even with a hurt quarterback and all this stuff. Just for that story of Alabama versus UCF national champion versus quote-unquote national champion.
Yeah,
right?
No, the more and more I think about it, it does make sense. I mean, to be fair, I think the committee would have to put Central Florida in because you're right. It's sending the wrong message as to saying you have to play in a Power 5 conference to get in. And you can have 2 losses... right, and lose a conference championship and lose later on in the season and still get in over an undefeated Central Florida team who, quote-unquote, called themselves national champions last year.
Here's the other thing. UCF has not lost to Purdue by 29 points either. So that's one thing they have in Ohio State, right? They don't give up as many points as Oklahoma. There's actually, I know these teams are better that these teams are playing, but still, UCF is dominating their opponents. They're doing all they have to do, right? They're not barely beating teams by 3. They're beating the crap out of South Florida with a hurt quarterback. South Florida was a pretty good team last year. I remember they were 10-2. So now it doesn't matter that doesn't mean that they're good this year. But I think the message you have to send to college football is we're not going to put 2-loss teams that have showed horrible losses this year over an undefeated team for a non-Power 5 because. Then, like you're saying, they're going to have to schedule Alabama, Clemson, and all these teams to get in, essentially. So,
I'll say this. I'm looking at Central Florida's record and games that they played this year, and they've beaten 2 good teams. They've beaten Cincinnati, who was ranked 24th at the time, and they beat them by over 20 points. And then going back towards the beginning of the year, they beat Pittsburgh by 35.
Yeah, Pittsburgh was ranked last week.
Right. So those are the only 2 games.
But haven't they blown out everybody though? Is there any close games?
Except for when they played Memphis earlier in the year, they only beat Memphis 31-30.
Okay, but they do play Memphis again.
Right, without their starting quarterback.
Correct.
And they only beat them by 1 the last time they played, and they had their starting quarterback.
Upside down?
I'm just looking at the previous score.
So that makes sense. So, but like I said, Memphis I think has a talented roster. They were pretty good last year.
They do.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Though I'm glad you brought that up because they have a chance, just like Oklahoma, to redeem themselves in a way. And if they blow out Memphis, then they literally have blown out everybody. And that is what you're supposed to do when you're a non-Power 5 team. Show that we're not supposed to be in this division. We're gonna blow everybody out. It's like Mission Viejo in football, right? They just blow everybody out because they're not. In their conference because they're just not, insider stuff.
One more scenario, and I don't believe we talked about this one, and if we have, then just say, Jared, you're an idiot. Okay, Georgia loses to Alabama, but they lose by a field goal. It's competitive, it's close, it's back and forth, right? They're not getting blown out. They're showing that they're tough. Okay, now Georgia has 2 losses on their schedule, right? Oklahoma and Ohio State both win, but it's unconvincing wins. It's because I think we can both agree at this point you have to win by style points. Getting a win is not just going to automatically vault you in anymore if you're Oklahoma and Ohio State. So
Absolutely.
if those two teams win, but win by just a field goal or a touchdown, and it's kind of sloppy and it's not really impressive, but then Georgia only loses by a field goal, but it's very competitive, what does the committee do?
Well, the problem with this is, so number one, you have Georgia being 2 loss teams.
So Georgia would be 2 loss.
And the other teams would be 1.
Oklahoma and Ohio State would still be 1 loss.
Correct. The one problem with that is I would agree with you if Georgia had lost to Notre Dame or had lost to Clemson. Problem is they lost to LSU, who Alabama beat by 4 touchdowns. So, and they lost to them by like 3 touchdowns. So that shows that they're not better than Oklahoma and Ohio State. Now here's another scenario, Jared. Let's say the same thing happens. Georgia loses to Alabama by 3 points. Then I think that's a case where then you see, if let's say Oklahoma and Ohio State lose, I think that's where UCF doesn't get in. Because then they go, okay, they lost to LSU, who was number 7 for most of the season, and then they lost to Alabama by 3. They're better than UCF, right? Let's give them another chance at Alabama because they almost beat them the first time, right? That's what would happen.
You're telling me, so see, this is the argument though. You're telling me that Georgia, regardless if it's a competitive game,
Problem is they got blown out by LSU,
but
though.
you're telling me that Oklahoma and Ohio State are both better teams than Georgia? Like, you see, I can't necessarily
they're
say
probably
that.
not, but you can't, like, because then you would put Alabama as number 1 every single year based on their talent. We can't, USC would be, like, ranked number 15 right now based on their talent, right? And they're 5 and 7. So,
Okay.
the talent means a lot, but you also have to win the big games. And Georgia's, to be honest, their biggest game this season, they lost to LSU by a lot. So, and LSU couldn't beat Texas A&M, albeit in 7 overtimes, and got shellacked by Alabama like everybody else. So LSU looks pretty pedestrian in the top 25. But what I'm saying, though, is I think, going back to this just silly UCF debate, is if Georgia were to barely lose and be competitive, much like the national championship last year, I think it would be hard to not put them in if Oklahoma and Ohio State lost their games, because it would show, okay, they're this close to Alabama, let's give them one more shot. Let's see if they can beat them again. If they can't, well, Alabama's the number 1 team anyway, so it doesn't matter. But, yeah. All right, so I want to do a little bit of predicting real quick on these games, some of these other games, see who's going to get in the Rose Bowl, stuff like that. So, Utah and Washington, who do you think wins, goes to the Rose Bowl?
Well, the way that Washington looked against Washington State last week, and that was kind of a surprise, right? It's a snow game. I think you and I picked Washington State. Washington looks really, really good. Utah is always a surprise team to me, because when you're talking about elite teams, and not to say that Utah, obviously they're in the Pac-12 championship, but it's just every year I don't see them as getting there. I'm like, Utah, it's not like they have great recruiting or they get these great talents and all that stuff, but the coaching, they have great coaching, right? And they put their players in positions to succeed. But I have to pick Washington. I think Washington has the better talent. I think Washington has had the tougher schedule out of the 2 teams this year. And as far as momentum goes, I think Washington, with that big win over Washington State, I think they're riding a little bigger momentum right now than Utah. So, they're both 9-3, right? So they're both kind of evenly matched.
Close, yeah.
And I think it will be a good game, but I think I have to give it to Washington up in Santa Clarita.
I'm gonna go Washington as well, because I think Chris Peterson's one of the best coaches in college football. He's had an off year this year, and Jake Browning has been a little disappointing, but nonetheless they still have Jake Browning and they still have Chris Peterson. So I'm gonna give them that. I know the coach over for Utah is a great coach. They're always competitive, but competitive doesn't get to the Rose Bowl. A consistent winning culture gets to the Rose Bowl. So I think Washington gets there, and then probably gets shellacked by Ohio State, because that's who's waiting probably in the Rose Bowl for one of these teams. It's someone compared it to Illinois. Remember one of those years against USC where Illinois played USC and just got murdered by them? This is probably what this is going to be if Ohio State ends up getting into that Rose Bowl. All right, Fresno State, Boise State. This is for the Mountain West. These 2 teams are both ranked, so let's say UCF has a big loss. These could be one of the teams in the Power 5 Bowl. So who do you think wins that game?
Again, both 10-2, both similarly, like relatively evenly matched. I think Boise State in this one. I think Fresno State, I really haven't heard much about this year. Like, I'm surprised Fresno State is even ranked, and they're 10-2.
Yeah, they've consistently won like big games though too this year.
Yeah, I'm giving this game to Boise State. To be very honest, I haven't really followed much of these two teams at all. So as far as their records go, or the games they played this year, but I think Boise State overall, from a talent standpoint, I think they're better. So
I agree with that. They have a quarterback that's been there for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Rippon, I think, is his name. That, I think, singularly is the reason why they can win a game like this. So I'm going to go Boise State as well. Like I mentioned, just want to mention that game because that could possibly be one of these teams that plays in a big bowl. All right, Clemson and Pitt. Any reason Clemson doesn't win this game?
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Pitt scored, like 3 points against Miami last week? So, yeah, I think Clemson wins that easy.
No way, Jose.
Northwestern and Ohio State. How does Northwestern possibly win this game?
Ohio State has to have a bad game. I think this is all on Ohio State.
But they can lose. You think they can lose to Northwestern?
They can, yes. But what I'm saying is this is all on Ohio State.
Yeah.
Northwestern can have the greatest game in the world. They still can lose. Ohio State has to play a bad game to lose. If Ohio State has the right mindset and comes out and says, we still have an opportunity to get into the playoffs and we need to go out and steamroll this team.
Yeah.
If they have that type of mindset, then yes, I think they go out and it's just a no-brainer. But if Ohio State's cocky and, we're looking ahead, blah, 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 then I think there's a chance Northwestern can sneak in. So what I'm saying is Ohio State would have to beat themselves to lose this game.
I think this is a closer game than people think, because Northwestern has been a very good team this year. Pat Fitzgerald just won, their head coach just won the Big Ten Coach of the Year award. So that's showing that, just because your name is Urban Meyer, Jim Harbaugh, does not mean that you're necessarily going to win an award, does not mean that your team had the best performance overall. So this Northwestern team is better than they have been the last couple of years, the best Northwestern team in years. I think they make it close, but Ohio State's talent gets them over the top and wins in this game, and ends up not vaulting them into the Final Four, just to go a little further on the prediction. Real quick, UCF and Memphis, is there any chance Memphis can beat UCF without their quarterback?
Oh, there is a chance, and I just mentioned it midway through the year. Memphis only lost by 1, and Central Florida had their starting quarterback. So now without their starting quarterback going to their backup, starting his first game of the year, I think there's a decent chance that Memphis could win. I think Central Florida will win this game, but I think it will be very, very competitive, and I think it will come down to the fourth quarter and Central Florida having to make a big play.
I'm going to go with a prediction that I only found out about 10 minutes ago when you told me that stat. I'm actually going to go Memphis.
Really?
I think Memphis, the loss of their quarterback, although they finished that game off well and beat South Florida by a lot, I think Memphis has a solid roster. They were very good last year. Anthony Miller, the wide receiver for the Chicago Bears, was one of their better players. I think they still have a talented enough roster to upset UCF in this game. I think UCF's little reign will be over, and then we'll see what they end up doing next year. But I think Memphis wins this game. And the big one, Alabama, Georgia. Jared, like I've said on the other questions, how does Georgia beat Alabama? Because Alabama's been the Golden State Warriors of college football this year.
Georgia has the formula. Obviously, their head coach was the former defensive coordinator, knows all of Nick Saban's tricks, or at least most of them, right? And the last 2 years has played Alabama. So, the familiarity is all there, right? Both of these teams know each other. I mean, other than a random trick play that you've never done before, there's nothing that either of these teams will be surprised by. This is a heavyweight matchup in the SEC. Alabama so far has shown that they are immortal and they're just ridiculously better than anyone else. But Georgia is no snub, right? No. Georgia has deserved to be here, other than the one loss against LSU. But you know what? Like we said, it's okay. You can
the
get
best
one
loss out of all the other teams.
It is. So this game will be competitive. Alabama will not just steamroll this team like they've steamrolled every other team this year. Alabama, in my opinion, will win because they have shown nothing this year to say otherwise. But this will be a very, very close game. I can see Alabama winning by 7 or 10 points, something like that, and maybe pulling away late in the fourth quarter. But I think for the majority of the game, and this game is in Atlanta as well, so
it's hometown.
There'll be a lot of Georgia fans in those stands. Obviously, Alabama travels very well, but this from a talent standpoint and from the crowd, very evenly matched game so far. But in the end, Alabama, because so far they're 12-0 and haven't shown me anything else.
Exactly.
Or other than that.
Real quick, I almost forgot Oklahoma and Texas. Who wins this game?
Woo! Man,
There's a lot of hate in this game. These quarterbacks have been talking crap on each other,
This might be one of the hardest games to pick, in my opinion, because of Oklahoma's defense.
9 o'clock game, too. That's an 11 o'clock game in
Dallas.
It's
in Dallas at AT&T Stadium in Texas. Yes, Oklahoma should win this game, but it's like, what defense is going to show up for Oklahoma? Because, like you mentioned,
the defense last time that they played Texas, they let them win.
Yeah, Texas doesn't score over 40 points for the majority of the year. At least they don't average that, and all of a sudden they score 45 against Oklahoma. So, Oklahoma should win this game, but I don't have the confidence that they will get it done. I don't know. So, Oklahoma by default.
I think actually Oklahoma blows them out.
Really?
I think Kyler Murray he's been demeaning them. There's some supposed ban on the Longhorns, the upside down Longhorns thing, which I don't understand why someone can't do whatever. But so Oklahoma, they want to beat the hell out of Texas. There's a lot of hate in this game. This might be one of the few. This has to be the first time that in the Big 12 championship it's been the Red River rivalry too, because the Big 12 championship hasn't existed for that much. So it's one of the few times where they've ever played. I think Oklahoma is just a clear better team. They have better players. And I think Kyler Murray, in one of his last games as a college football player, will come out and try to get his team into the Final Four. Because if not, he only has one game left, because he has said he's going to the A's no matter what next year, which is kind of a crazy thing to say. Yes, the Oklahoma quarterback, who's the star and might get them to the Final Four, is going to play for the Oakland Athletics next year. So, nonetheless, we're long on this segment already, but I felt like this was a good discussion. Needed to happen. So your Final Four prediction, really quick. We've already gone over, so it doesn't matter. Really quick, what does the Final Four end up being by the time we go to our next podcast?
Alabama number 1, Clemson number 2, Notre Dame number 3.
Here we go.
Ohio State number 4.
Oh, you're going. So Ohio State bolts from 6.
Yeah, I don't trust Oklahoma, and unfortunately the 2 losses for Georgia is going to hurt them.
Based on my predictions, it has to be Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and then Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is the one team that shows out this weekend, so I think Oklahoma gets in the Final Four. I want to see Oklahoma versus Alabama.
Oh my gosh.
I want to see 80 to 77. Okay, Alabama scoring 80 points. Tua has to be a game of his life. Right, I want them to beat the score of that Texas A&M LSU game in a Final Four game. I believe that game would be in the South, anyways. But nonetheless, so Oklahoma,
as our good friend Alex Silva would say, hammer the over.
Hammer the over. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to break real quick. If you're listening live on OC Rock Radio, you're going to hear Christmas music for the first time in a while here. You're probably going to be hearing that next couple podcasts. But if you are going to break, obviously on YouTube, you're going to hear some clips coming up, because we're going to go to NFL. We're going to stick with football. We're going to move to NFL. A lot of things to talk about that. So we'll be right back here on the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio.
He said, good job, good game. That was brief. I didn't feel like talking. I don't know. Left Cleveland, goes down to Cincinnati. I don't know. It's just somebody that was in our locker room asking for us to play for him, and then goes to a different team we play twice a year. Everybody can have their spin on it, but that's how I feel.
Matched up against the linebacker. Breeze goes. Other side, Kirkwood. Touchdown. All the newbies are catching him on Thanksgiving night. Prescott throws over the middle. Pass is caught by Cooper. Breaks loose. No flags on the field. Cooper inside the 10. Touchdown.
Cover 2 podcast back live on OC Rock Radio. Sticking with football, but jumping to the NFL, where we've got a big-time matchup here on Thursday night, tomorrow night, where the Dallas Cowboys...
Oh, you're Dallas
my
Cowboys.
team.
Yes.
Yeah, going up against a red-hot New Orleans Saints team. And a little later in this segment, we're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns just putting a whooping on the Bengals.
Oh, yeah.
But not necessarily the game. It's what happened within the game.
Disrespect.
Little disrespect going on between a player and a coach.
Couple of incidents.
Oh, yeah. And then to finish off this segment, we're going to talk about the standings in the AFC and the NFC. And as things are starting to become more clear as we're getting into Week 13, seeing what teams are starting to become contenders and what teams are pretenders. But like I mentioned, let's get started with this big-time matchup on Thursday night as the New Orleans Saints come into Dallas and Jerry's World to play the 6-5 Dallas Cowboys, as the Saints have won 10 games in a row after losing in Week 1. Big-time matchup here. Nick, I mean, I'm not going to be biased here, but I want to get your unbiased opinion. How do you see this game shaping up?
Well, I see it being competitive. Thursday night games, unless your team is terrible, like the Arizona Cardinals, you tend to put on a solid performance on Thursday night because you're not able to study as much film on the team. See, there's a lot of wild stuff you got to do. I think this game will be competitive. I think the Saints are the best team in the NFL. I think the Cowboys are the best team in the NFC East. I think the Saints are the better team. But like I said, Thursday night, and actually, thinking about it, the Saints and Cowboys are actually not really playing a true Thursday night game because they both played on Thanksgiving, so they've had a week to prepare. So I actually take that back now that I think about it. This is just a normal week game, pretty much. But nonetheless, it's in Dallas, and in that stadium, the Cowboys tend not to get blown out. And the Saints tend to blow people out. So I think this will be somewhere in the middle. I think the Cowboys can win this game. Let's say if they use the clock, if they use Ezekiel Elliott, if the defense can get penetration on Drew Brees. I saw some stat last night that said the combined sacks and turnovers for Drew Brees is only 12 for the whole season. So that means he's either been sacked or turned the ball over 12 times the entire season. The next person was like 24. So he's halved everybody else. So the way to beat Drew Brees is to pressure him and sack him. And I think the Cowboys have a great front seven. I think they can if they can get penetration, if they can use Zeke in a manner to run out the clock and not let that Saints offense get on the field, I think the Cowboys can win the game. But it's hard for me to pick against the Saints. But I think this is the hardest game to pick this week, and I think this is the best game this week because if the Cowboys win this one, they really put themselves with no Alex Smith on the Redskins and no Giants to be heard of, and a Philadelphia team that would then be, I believe, 2 games back of them. They'd be really in the driver's seat. So I see it being competitive, but to make a quick prediction, I think the Saints end up just somehow pulling it out.
Yeah, no, I think this game will be very, very competitive, and DeMarcus Lawrence has come out this week and said some kind of fiery words, kind of going up against the New Orleans Saints offensive line, basically saying we're going to come out and wear you guys down. I can't say some of the words.
So going to exactly what I'm talking about, though.
Right, exactly. And listen, the Dallas Cowboys defense has been very, very good this year. And the thing is, this New Orleans Saints offense just looks unstoppable, right? We've talked about great offenses this year with the Chiefs and the Rams. I think this Saints offense so far has been the most consistent, and the way that Drew Brees has been able to hook up with his receivers, whether it's the veteran in Michael Thomas or it's the rookie in Traquan Smith, right? You have obviously Alvin Kamara, and then you get Ingram back, and that's a great 1-2 punch for them. So this entire offense is completely clicking right now, and the way that they're able to score points, their defense doesn't have to play from behind, right? Their defense doesn't just come out, play loose, let their defensive ends just run up against the quarterback, because a lot of times their opponents are having to pass the ball, right? Their opponents can't sit and have a balanced offense. So for Dallas, I think they can win this game, but what they have to do to win is not going to be easy. They're going to have to control the clock, run the ball with Zeke, have timely passes, right? Use their play action well. The greatest thing the Cowboys can do is use clock. When you keep Drew Brees on the sideline with a hat on and not his helmet, that's the best way to beat the Saints.
Exactly,
because when Drew Brees is on the field, when the Saints are controlling the ball and controlling the clock, that's a recipe for disaster for any other team in this league. I don't care if you're the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Rams, doesn't matter. So, yes, the Cowboys can win this game. To make a prediction, I'll do it right now. I really think I have to go with the Saints, right? The Saints are too hot of a team right now.
They got to lose before I start predicting them.
They are. And the Cowboys they're clicking right now. They're 3 straight wins against what you can say somewhat formidable opponents.
I mean, they played it was the Redskins last week?
They did,
They played
without Alex
Redskins,
Smith.
Without Alex Smith, but the Redskins are still a pretty solid team. The
Defensively, yes.
Exactly,
They are.
So the Cowboys being able to move the ball on their defense has nothing to do with Alex. You know what I'm saying? So The Redskins probably won't make the playoffs because of that, but they're still an opponent that will. They're one of those annoying opponents that will be able to. But
Right.
I think the biggest thing for the Cowboys and moving forward, and we saw finally a glimpse of this. Amari Cooper finally came out, and that's another way because it keeps the Cowboys' offense balanced. So when I'm talking about you're using Zeke and you're using Dak's legs, I think you need to do a lot of RPOs in this game too. But having that number one receiver finally, that's another way where you keep the Saints off the field and you're able to score because you finally have that guy that you can go to when you're running the ball and they're like, oh, we got to stop Zeke. And then, Amari Cooper's wide open down the field. Let's hit him 50 yards.
Right.
So, that's the way you can beat him.
Both of the touchdown passes to Amari Cooper, he was open, but not necessarily wide open. Dak took some chances, and Amari Cooper used his athleticism to basically get those yak yards after catch, right? So I think it's every week Amari Cooper's getting a little more comfortable in this offense, and I think the great thing about that is now defenses can't put 8 and 9 guys in the box and just say, okay, Dak, throw the ball. Because, you have Amari Cooper. Cole Beasley in the slot hasn't really done too much this year. But it's having that good dynamic receiver on the outside is opening up some lanes for Zeke.
Yeah.
And it's kind of even, opening things up for the Cowboys. So, yes, that has been great for them. But they're going to have to control the ball because if you want to if you're going to try and get in a shootout with the Saints and Drew Brees,
come on, man.
That is a recipe for disaster.
The Rams couldn't even do it. So it's just it's nonsensical. But I think the Cowboys do have a chance. They're definitely starting to look like a playoff team, not necessarily one of the best. I mean, you look at the teams. It goes. It's Rams, Chiefs, and Saints. And then there's a clear level down. You might be able to throw
Tier
the Patriots
2.
In there. Yeah, the Patriots. But the Patriots have kind of been pretty pedestrian this year. They're winning games, but they're not blowing people out like the Chiefs, Rams, and Saints. So, so the Cowboys are in that kind of second 2.5 tier kind of stuff like that. But they are starting to finally look like a playoff team. Where earlier this season I thought they had no chance. So good for them. All right, moving on. Let's get to this Browns thing. You got Baker Mayfield. Having a great game against the Bengals. The Bengals, they lose Andy Dalton. We're not really going to talk about that because I didn't even think the Bengals were going to make the playoffs with him. So now he's out. Jeff Driscoll going to get a chance. But nonetheless, that doesn't matter because the Browns were up like 29-0 at one point. So that, again, has nothing to do with the quarterback on the other team. Baker Mayfield, but that's not even the story. Baker Mayfield has a great game. Of course, we all know that Hue Jackson was just hired as a special assistant to the head coach in Marvin Lewis. I mean, just that quote in its end. Why Marvin Lewis is still a head coach? First of all, we've been wondering, and then Hue Jackson really earned the job as a special assistant after going 0-32 or whatever he was. So I understand that, but during the game, Demarius Randall, who I believe didn't play that much under Hue Jackson in that team, got an interception, handed the ball to Hue Jackson on the sidelines. Last time I checked, you usually don't hand the ball to a coach on the sidelines from the other team. You hand the ball to a running back. But nonetheless, and then you have Baker Mayfield after the game. Hue Jackson going in for a friendly handshake, pound the back, and Baker Mayfield had none of it and then lit him up in the press conference saying things like he shouldn't have gone to the other team. And Baker Mayfield kind of, not squashing the issue, but making it worse. What were your thoughts on this whole debacle? And is Baker Mayfield being immature, or is he right about what he said about Hue Jackson?
I'm not going to say Baker Mayfield was completely right, but this is Baker Mayfield.
Exactly.
This is
he
his
grabbed
MO.
his crotch at the center of the field at Kansas.
This is his attitude. The Cleveland Browns, whether Hue Jackson wanted Baker Mayfield, whether it was the front office, the owner, it doesn't matter. Everyone has to know that this is Baker Mayfield's MO, right? You get under his skin, he's not going to forget about it, okay? So the fact that Hue Jackson decided to go to a division rival, right? And I know he's been an offensive coordinator there before, but the fact that you go there, just a few weeks removed from being released from the Browns, and now you're playing against your former team, that's not going to sit well with Baker Mayfield. And it's probably not going to sit well with most players. It wouldn't sit well with me. But Baker Mayfield is a different type of cat because he doesn't care what other people think.
Yeah.
And he will come out and say something or not say whatever he desires, right? He knows now that he is the starting quarterback for this team. It is clearly his job to lose. There's Tyrod Taylor is clearly the backup, and it's not like he has to really fight for his job anymore. He does have to play well, but it's not like the Browns are saying, okay, Tyrod Taylor, you're still getting snaps.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So Baker Mayfield's becoming a little more comfortable. And I think because of that, he is now starting to come out and say some things that he would normally say back at Oklahoma. I think, in training camp this offseason, the first half of the season, he was still a little reserved because he didn't want to be too outlandish and do anything that would, have the coaches basically remove his job. But I think now with his head coach gone, there's an interim coach who is a defensive coordinator, so they probably don't even speak that much, right? So he's kind of been able to, the reins have been taken off a little bit.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I don't necessarily agree with it, but this is Baker Mayfield. This is what he's going to do, and you live with it or die with it if you're the Cleveland Browns.
I completely agree with Baker Mayfield. Hue Jackson, I remember this when I was watching Hard Knocks. Hue Jackson just came off as a coach that was 9-7, 10-6 the last couple years, and not 1-15, 0-16. The guy, for some reason, just thinks he was a good NFL coach, and he wasn't. He was literally the worst of all time, worse than Nick Saban with the Dolphins, which is like saying something, right? Hue Jackson. You got to know, and Baker Mayfield has a point. If Jackson goes to the Bengals next year, you know what? That's a little different. And Baker Mayfield probably doesn't light him up at the press conference because Hue Jackson, you're going to sit on the sidelines and not make money, right? If the Bengals offer you a head coach job, you're going to take, or the assistant job, you're going to take an assistant job, right? But to do it during the season when, I don't know, maybe you could look this up. Do they play the Bengals again this year? Or did they already play them? And because I'm wondering if they play them twice, that really is almost like Hue Jackson trying to beat the Browns twice, and which didn't happen this first game.
They do? They play each other.
Yeah. So you see what I'm saying? So Baker Mayfield has a point. He's saying you're going to this team trying to beat us twice, and I think that's why I think Baker is 97% right in this. Maybe he needs to get over it a little bit because it's just not productive. And now the Browns aren't going to make the playoffs or anything like that, but you don't need to bring this unneeded attention on a team that you just beat the crap out of, right? Let's say this game is close. You score a touchdown at the very end. Hue Jackson tried it. You beat him up, though. You did what you're supposed to do. You don't need to kick them when they're down necessarily. But I think he's mostly right on this. I agree with Baker, and I would probably do the same thing. I probably wouldn't even shook the coach's hand at the end of the game.
Listen, this to me is very, very simple, and I think Hue Jackson has been figured out. He is a better offensive coordinator or assistant coach than he is a head coach.
He's the worst NFL coach of all time. Based on record, though.
Okay.
He won one game.
He is better suited focusing on one side of the football.
Yeah.
Right? Or even if he wants to be a quarterback's coach, doesn't matter. I think he can be a good offensive coordinator. But when he has to be the head guy and also be in the defensive meetings and the special teams meetings and be in charge of an entire team and organization, I just don't think that's his best suited, thing for him. He is a coordinator, and I think that's what he does best. So I think if he can realize that, then I think he can flourish and continue to be in this league for another 10, 15 years because he's still relatively a young coach. The problem with that is in today's sports, and I'm not even just talking about football, in today's sports, what happens is you can revitalize yourself whether you've been fired one time, 10 times, or you've never been fired, right? You are an assistant coach for 2 or 3 years and a team does well, you start to get on the hot seat again, right? And people are like, oh man, like this coach, he's finally figured it out. It took him some time, but he's got it now. That happened with Hue Jackson. Hue Jackson was a coach with the Raiders, right? He got fired there. What happened? He was an assistant coach again for a couple years, bounced around to a couple teams. He started to get hot again. His name started to kind of roam around. What happens? He gets hired by the Browns, and the same thing. He underachieves in Cleveland. I think what will happen again is whether he takes some time off or whether he maybe next year establishes himself as the Bengals offensive coordinator. I think he does that for a couple years, and unfortunately, I think he's going to start to get some notice again, and I think there's going to be a team out there that's willing to take another chance.
Come on.
Even though I think the proof is in the pudding that he is better suited as a coordinator.
Can he really win? But here's the thing. Don't you hire a head coach to win the Super Bowl? right? Dude, does anybody think Hue Jackson can lead a team to like, if you're hiring Hue Jackson, you're hoping that you're going to make the playoffs. You're not going to win, like, you know what I'm saying? I know not everybody can be Bill Belichick or Andy Reid or Sean Payton, like, or Sean McVay, right? No, there's not a lot of people who can be that. But they can at least be Matt Nagy, right? And, like, Hue Jackson is not, he's just not in that, like, so I don't think a team will try out. If a team does that, I think it's going to be, that team is just not that smart. I think he's probably a career, or maybe a college coach. Yeah, I can see him maybe becoming a college, but not an NFL coach. All right, we need to move on. We're going to look at the standings now. And so you look at the AFC and you got the Chiefs and Patriots, right? And they're probably going to be 1 and 2 seeds. There's a chance the Chargers could be over the Chiefs if they beat them, but, I think we both probably will predict that doesn't happen. Then you look at the NFC. You got Saints, Rams, and Bears. They're kind of locked into their spots. So I want to ask you about these 3 AFC teams. I have the Texans, Steelers, and Chargers. Who is the best team? Who can get the furthest in the playoffs out of those? And then, the Chargers are more likely going to be the 5th seed. They're not going to be higher, so they're not going to have home games and stuff like that. So who out of those 3 teams is the best team without looking at their record now?
I'd have to go Pittsburgh. And I say that because of the veteran experience more than anything. I really would say Houston because I do like Houston. I love Deshaun Watson, right? Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins, self-explanatory. That Houston defense, when they're healthy, I think is great. It's just a matter of, can J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney stay on the field, for the majority of the game? I know they're going to get rests during the game, but can they be the guys up front that wreaks havoc on quarterbacks? If they can do that, you got Tyrann Mathieu in the secondary. You have Joseph in the secondary. You have a good linebacker. I mean, this defense with Romeo Crennel is built for the playoffs and built for whether you want to stuff the run or play the pass. So, but with all that being said, I think the Steelers have the most veteran presence and have the most number of guys that have been to the playoffs and know what it takes to get there. So even though they lost a tough game to the Broncos this past week, it was a very, very close game and it was a competitive game. They did not get blown out. So as of right now, I would give it to the Steelers in a slight edge over the Texans.
Yeah, because the Texans are probably going to end up with a better record because they have an easy schedule and they're going to end up either 12-4, 13-3, just based on looking at the teams. That's what. So without looking at the record, you still think Pittsburgh would beat them in the playoffs. That's what you're saying?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. I think Pittsburgh would end up as the number 3, and then Houston would be the number 4.
See, I'm going to give the side edge to the Chargers. I think the Chargers have an amazing roster now. They just lost Melvin Gordon because, Cardinals starting to take people out, I guess, now. But it was actually an unfortunate injury. Robert Kimdich's leg swung around and just made Melvin Gordon land awkwardly. Nothing malicious there. But they lose Melvin Gordon for the next couple weeks. But I think when they get him back, they still have a more talented roster overall than the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're just getting healthier and healthier, besides Melvin Gordon, right? Joey Bosa has come back. Without, and I know the Cardinals are bad, but without their 2 interior defensive linemen, they end up beating the Cardinals 45-10. So they still have an underrated defense and one of the best offenses in the league. I think the Chargers are the best team and will quote-unquote upset some teams in this playoffs. I don't think they can get to the Super Bowl, but I think they are the best team out of those 3.
They have a tough schedule.
They do.
Right? They have this Sunday night in Pittsburgh. So there's a head matchup right there between 2 big teams.
Yeah,
they still have to play the Chiefs in Kansas City on a Thursday.
They have to play Seahawks, too?
They don't.
Oh, they don't play
Not the Seahawks. No, they're at the Steelers. Then they get the Bengals. That should be a win. Then on a short week, travel to Kansas City. Oh, God. Then they play the Ravens the following week on a Saturday.
It's tough.
That's a tough game. And then they end the season in Denver, which is no slouch. So
and they lost to Denver, too.
I'm sorry?
They lost to Denver, too.
Yeah, so those games right there, I mean, that's a tough schedule. No, I would say they have like the top 5 toughest schedules remaining. Is,
but I still think they're the best team. They might lose. Now, we can maybe prove it here with the Steelers and Chargers. I think out of those 3 teams, it goes Chargers, Steelers, Texans. So the Steelers beat them, then I'm going to change my mind next week. So I'll say that. But the Chargers beat the Steelers. There's a chance they're better than the Patriots. Okay, I'm throwing it out there, and it's them and the Chiefs, right? And we'll see that matchup with the Chiefs coming up, like you said, 2 weeks later. So I do think the Chargers have so much talent. I just think it just feels like the Chargers' year to get far. I don't know if they can beat the Chiefs twice coming up in the next couple weeks, including the playoffs. But I do think that they're the best team out of those three. Hopefully I'm not proven wrong by the Steelers this weekend. But, both the Steelers and the Chargers also lost to Denver, too. So, you look at that, too. All right. So we don't have a lot of time, so I kind of want to just do this next part quick. You have both, you look at the playoffs, and for the AFC, you got the Ravens, Colts, Dolphins, Bengals, Broncos, and Titans, all with very similar records. And in the NFC, you have the Cowboys in first place, but with a low record. And then you have the Vikings, Redskins, Seahawks, Panthers, and Eagles. Real quick, we'll stick with the AFC real quick. Which team in the AFC do you think is more than likely going to grab that 6th spot? Who do you think has the best chance to grab that 6th spot?
I think it's between Baltimore and the Colts. And the Colts, I think, have been one of the most surprising teams, right? And I think Andrew Luck is really showing just how valuable he is. Because even though they're at 6-5, it's not like they're 9-2 or 10-1, but they are playing really well.
They started 1-5,
right?
Yeah,
and they've now. I mean, I think now the
Chargers of last year. That's
right,
who they are.
right. There's no more concerns about Andrew Luck's shoulder, right? I think they've given him a little more control week by week,
exactly.
And I think he's shown, all right, I'm back to my old self. Let me take the reins back. You have Marlon Mack, a very good running back. Your offensive line is better. Your defense is getting better with a new defensive coordinator this year. So. Right now, I would actually give it to the Colts because I think the Colts are just playing a little better than the Ravens are. Even though the Ravens are a very good team, I think the Colts are riding a little bit higher momentum right now. So, yeah, I would actually give that 6th seed to Andrew Luck and those Indianapolis Colts.
I'm going to agree with you, although I think the Titans still have a chance. They've had a tough schedule this year, and although they didn't look very good at all against the Texans. Yeah, exactly. Mariota's had shoulder problems, stuff like that, but I think when Mariota's healthy and he kind of gets going, that defense is solid enough to possibly get them in. Because I think they're better than Denver. The Bengals are not good. The Dolphins are overrated. And the Ravens starting quarterback is Lamar Jackson. And I haven't been that high on him. And like I was saying, I think to you in the break, you look at the Colts and Ravens, you're really picking Lamar Jackson over Andrew Luck, right? And they have the same record. It's not like the Ravens are 2 games. So I'm going to go with Andrew Luck there, but dark horse Titans, if something happens or the Colts start losing games. I think the Colts are the Chargers of last year. These losses might bite them in the ass a little later in the season because they started 1-5. NFC, I'll start. I think the Cowboys are going to win the NFC East. They might lose the Saints and go 6-6, but they're better than the Redskins without Alex Smith, and the Eagles just look like crap this year. So I think that they'll get in. So I'll keep them as a 4th seed. I think the Vikings are in. I think they've had a weird year, but they'll end up winning and getting in. And then, man, I'm super disappointed in the Carolina Panthers because I thought they were like the number 3 team, number 5 team in the NFL, right? And they have gone on to get blown out by Pittsburgh, lose a terrible game and try to go for 2 and call a terrible play against the Lions, and then blow a game against the Seahawks at home when we all thought, the Panthers are undefeated. I don't know what's going on with them, but this loss to the Seahawks really hurt, and you look at the Seahawks, they play the 49ers twice and the Cardinals once in the next 5 games. That's 3 wins right there. And I know the Cardinals have been notoriously the last couple of years have gone 1-1 with them and have been able to beat them in games, especially in Seattle. But that was Bruce Arians. This isn't Bruce Arians. So the Seahawks are going to win those 3 games, and then whoever they play besides that, they're probably going to end up being a 10-win team at worst. So I think the Seahawks end up getting in there. What do you think ends up happening in the NFC?
No, I think you're completely right. The Seahawks are the hot pick right now.
Which hurts me to say, but it's true.
No, the Russell Wilson is willing and leading this team right now because they've got a running back committee. I mean, Doug Baldwin's their best receiver, but really, how good is Doug Baldwin, right? And their defense is good. It's not the Seahawks' great defense we've seen in the last 3-4 years. Yeah. No, they're not. But Russell Wilson is doing just enough to get this team to win. And like you mentioned, because of that easy schedule they have for the last 5 weeks of the season, the majority of that 5 weeks, that really, I think, is going to get them at least 3 wins. And right there, they're not going to beat the Rams for first place in the division, but I think they definitely get in as one of the 2 wild cards.
Do they still? Can you look at their schedule real quick? Do they still play the Rams? I think they could beat the Rams. I know they played them for sure once and had a real close game, and it really came down to like a last play too.
No, so they actually do have it. Okay, here's their schedule.
Yeah.
This week, they get the 49ers at home. Win,
Yeah,
right?
it's a win.
Next week, they get the Vikings at home. The Vikings are similar to the Seahawks.
That's a
They're
tough
up and
game.
down.
That could be a loss.
That's
though.
a tough game.
Yeah.
The following week, they're at the 49ers. So they get them boom, boom again.
Yeah.
That should be another easy win. The following week, they're at home against the Chiefs. So that...
Oh, the Chiefs.
So there's your loss right there, right? There's your loss. And then to end the season, they're home against the Cardinals. So... they could go 3-2, possibly 4.
Well, no. I think no matter what, they go 3-2. I think there's a chance they go 4-1 because I think they can beat the Vikings. Who'd you say they were playing on the road besides the Niners?
They are at.
Or they not having another road game?
So you know what? Their only road game is against. Wow, yeah, their next 4 out of the last 5 games are at home.
They're going to go 4-1. They're not going to lose. They're not going to lose 2 games at home.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
To get 4
I
out of
think
the
they
last
can
5
beat the
at
Chiefs, too. Just because that home crowd and the way... Russell Wilson is so damn good.
Oh, they can.
He can beat anyone.
That's a Sunday night game, too, on NBC.
There you go.
There's a plug for
all
NBC.
Right. Plug for NBC, yeah.
You're welcome.
All right, we do need to go to break, though. So interesting. We'll see what happens with this NFL playoffs. But nonetheless, I think it's starting to... Just like college football, it's starting... You're starting to see who's going to start making it. And based on schedules and stuff, the Seahawks are a better team than their schedule shows. And the Panthers, the Panthers just had a chance, but they ended up kind of screwing it up. And now they're behind the Seahawks no matter what because they lost to them, too. So they're going to need help. And they played the Saints twice still to end the season. So it's not easy. You could ask, some people we know that are Panthers fans. It's not going to be easy. But, all right, we're going to go to break. Coming up next is Do You Care? Like we always do. So we'll have some interesting stories there that are not involving football. And we'll be right back here on the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio.
Phil Mickelson defeated Tiger Woods in a widely touted one-on-one match on Friday. The 2 golfers competed against one another in the sport's first ever pay-per-view event. It was dubbed The Match. Lefty and Tiger remained tied after 18 holes, leading them to create a makeshift hole on the practice greens. Mickelson ended up beating Woods with a 4-foot birdie putt on the 22nd hole of the day. The prize, $9 million. Not bad for a day's work.
Barrett driving, knocked away, and Gonzaga wins it. Barrett drove in, got the contact, but could not get the foul call. And Gonzaga, with grit and determination, wins it with its defense. How about that?
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast. Me and Jared just finishing our prep right before we have to go on live. Jared, do you know what time it is right now?
What time is it, Nick?
It's time for a post-Thanksgiving version of Do You Care? It's Do You Care. It's a game that we play every single week. Like I said on Twitter, if you don't listen to Do You Care, you're just a bad person, okay? So you got to listen to Do You Care because it's one of the best parts of the show, although the show's been pretty good so far. So we have 6 questions to ask each other if you don't know how to play the game. We ask each other whether we care about a topic or not, and then we tell you whether we care about that topic. It's that simple. So, Jared, I'm going to start with you. You get the first question like usual. Do you care that Gonzaga beat number 1 Duke?
No, I don't care. And I think the reason why this is... Duke was number 1 at the time, so that's why this is a bigger deal than it should be. But with all the hype that was surrounding Duke after they completely whooped on Kentucky, the first game of the season, it was like, oh my gosh, this Duke team can play in the NBA. They have the top 3 players in the nation. They're so great. And Coach K, all the meanwhile, sitting here saying, yes, we're a good team, but pump the brakes. We are still freshmen, right? Yeah. And these guys have not run through the ACC gauntlet yet, and they haven't been challenged. So there's going to be a time when this team loses. A lot, they lost earlier than many people expected, but nonetheless, they did lose. Gonzaga is now the new number 1 team, and they are no slouch. So really, I think this is more about, listen, Duke is still a good team, but they're just very young, and just, give them some time. They're going to go through some hurdles. They're not going to go undefeated. Obviously, they're not, because they already have 1 loss. But I said that even before the beginning started. I said, as great of a team as they are, they will not go undefeated. The ACC is too good. So really, just congratulations to Gonzaga. It was a good, good tournament that they were in. Once we get into league play, when teams are in conference play, that's when we'll start to really see what teams are good and what teams are not. So it was a good win for Gonzaga, but nothing to write home about because it's still so early in the season. Nick, do you care that Matt Brown is the new head coach at North Carolina?
No, because I'm not a fan of the North Carolina Tar Heels, but it is interesting because Matt Brown, one of the best college football coaches of all time, of course, as we know, Jared, was the head coach of the Texas Longhorns when them and Vince Young came in and beat USC and Pete Carroll, Reggie Bush, Lindell White, all of them. So in that fateful 2006 national championship game. He also got them back to the national championship against Alabama. Unfortunately, his quarterback, Colt McCoy, who we will talk about his team in the next question, Colt McCoy got hurt in that game, and so he was not able to beat Alabama in that game as well. But I believe that was 2009. So 2 national championships in 5 years is pretty good. And then, he had a little hard time recruiting his last couple of years and ended up leaving Texas and leaving them in shambles, almost proving how good of a coach he was. But North Carolina, North Carolina's been a pretty solid team the last couple of years. A couple times they've been ranked, a couple times not. Obviously, they're known more for basketball. So it should be interesting to see what happens. Mac Brown is 67 years old, so I don't see this being a long-term thing. I mean, maybe max 8 years or something there. I don't know how long his contract was, but it should be interesting. I'm always down for these big-time head coaches to come back. Obviously, we've seen Chip Kelly come back with UCLA. That didn't work out necessarily right away, but, hearing some of the quotes from other Pac-12 coaches, UCLA is on its way to becoming a better team. Mac Brown, I think, will have a little better of a roster than Chip Kelly had in his return to college football. But I don't care, but I'm excited to see what happens because the ACC has been, Clemson and Florida State dominated the last couple of years, and pretty much Clemson the real last couple of years. So I'm down for any team to kind of challenge the Tigers up in for the ACC. Jared, sticking with football, like I mentioned, do you care that the Washington Redskins have signed Reuben Foster?
I do care, and this is a very surprising move, and surprising, but because it's the Redskins, I guess not really surprising. This just seems to kind of be their MO. They're one of the other teams, almost like the Bengals, where they like to take chances on players. For people who don't know this story, the San Francisco 49ers drafted Reuben Foster last year with their first overall pick. I think it was number 10 or 11. Coming out of Alabama, one of the best linebacker prospects out of Alabama
Beast.
in the last 10, 15 years. He is a beast. The problem is he has been accused of domestic violence, and I believe it was while he was in college or the end of his college career. And that supposedly got all worked out, and he was cleared, and he was able to play again. Well, guess what? 2 weeks ago, when the 49ers were in, or last week when the 49ers were in Tampa Bay, the night before the game, Reuben Foster gets a knock on his hotel door at 11 o'clock at night from the Tampa Bay police, and he gets arrested for another supposed domestic violence dispute, I guess. So it's of course the 49ers immediately let him go and say, listen, we gave you a big chance, and that is it. You are walking on eggshells, and if you do anything as far as getting a speeding ticket, we're going to let you go. Well, of course, when you get accused of another domestic violence case, you are done. For some reason, the Washington Redskins chose to take a flyer on him. Now, he is on the NFL's commissioner exempt list, and that means that he is not allowed to play in games or practice with a team, but it is up to the team's discretion as to whether he is allowed to be around the team facilities. So we're not sure if Reuben Foster will be around, but the rumors are that the Redskins really liked him coming out of college, and who wouldn't from a football standpoint? But at this point, this is not about football. This is about a sexual abuse case, right? And that will trump football or sports any day of the week. So the fact that the Redskins took a chance on him, I don't know what inside information they have, but to me, regardless of whether Reuben Foster is innocent or not, the fact that he has already had 2 cases of this, it just doesn't look good on your resume. It doesn't scream a person that you would want on your football team. So, like I said, I don't know why the Redskins did this. I don't see him playing for this team anytime soon until this case gets resolved. And it's just a murky situation. Why even put your name in this type of hat? Because now, as the Redskins' whole organization, you're getting looked at as the team that's taking a chance on a potential domestic abuse.
It's typical NFL. Like, I understand it because there's certain things that guys do where, their talent and the way they can make money for the NFL or a team or a city can sometimes trump one incident that you do in life. I mean, for God's sake, we give Floyd Mayweather like $50 million per fight, and we know he's had domestic violence stuff, but we still pay to watch his fights because the guy's a draw, right? Sometimes whether it's okay or not, we do forget about that stuff. Foster, though, it's too many things, right? I compare him loosely to Robert Nkemdiche because I'm close to the Cardinals and I know this roster really well. Nkemdiche was supposed to be a top 5 pick, ended up dropping to number 30 with the Cardinals the year the Cardinals were almost made to the Super Bowl, or the year after. And he pretty much has had 0 to extremely limited incidents off the field. The Cardinals told him he needs to stay away from his brother and all these other things that would attach him to gangs and stuff like that, and he had fallen out a window. Reuben Foster had similar incidents coming out of college, but it seemed to stay on. We all know the thing with his girlfriend, where his girlfriend completely lied. But man, there's just too many things, right? It's the weed in college. It's your stock is dropping in the NFL draft, and then all these incidents. And the 49ers just like, dude. And they drafted Fred Warner from BYU anyways in his same exact position. So the 49ers obviously knew that there was a chance this was going to happen. The Redskins, I think, are literally just taking a flyer. They're saying, we hope this guy isn't innocent. We don't care about our reputation. But if he's innocent, we have a great linebacker. And that's what Reuben Foster is. So very interesting. Didn't mean to take your time on this.
No.
I want to definitely comment. Yeah.
As we should. And the last thing I want to say is you mentioned, we don't care about your reputation. If that's the way that this team is thinking, then they shouldn't be an NFL organization.
Yeah,
and they shouldn't be a part of the NFL because if you listen, I get it, it's going to happen, but if you're a scout or player personnel or owner or whatever, and you're taking a player who has these allegations against them, multiple allegations, at some point, where is your just human dignity? You have to be able to say, this is more about football, right? This is more about just getting a better player and talent on the football field. What type of person are you bringing into the locker room, right? Because you're sending the wrong message to your fans. If I'm a Washington Redskins fan right now, I'm not happy about that.
No.
I'm not happy about it at all. Why would you want that type of player on your team? Now, if he comes out innocent, then, if someone's playing with him, or who knows? We don't know the story. There's a lot more that needs to come out, and hopefully this isn't true, but it's just not a good look, man.
No, it's terrible.
At all. Nick, do you care, switching to a lighter topic, that Josh Donaldson and Brian McCann are both going to the Braves?
Yes, I do care, because this makes the Braves a better team. So Brian McCann's a catcher and a DH, but obviously in the National League you don't have a DH. He's going to be a solid leader to a young team. The Braves already have stars like Freddie Freeman, Robert Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Nick Markakis is a free agent, so we'll see what they do with that. And then you had Josh Donaldson, who's been a bona fide star, barring his arm issues and just injuries the last couple of years that have hampered him. They signed him one year, $23 million. They're taking a 1-year tryout for a lot of money because they have a lot of money. But if Donaldson goes back to anywhere near his MVP form, this Braves team is better than last year, and they made the playoffs last year. They weren't able to beat the Dodgers, who were just a better team than them. But if you get Josh Donaldson and Brian McCann, along with the other catchers that they have, I believe Tyler Flowers is the other catcher that they have, and he's a very solid player, almost made the All-Star game last year. This is a very formidable roster, and I'm excited to see this young Brave team to continue being good, because obviously you have the rumors that Bryce Harper might go to the Phillies, and of course he could always go back to the Nationals. So the NL East is going to be tough, and the Braves understand that they need to add resources. I like Josh Donaldson. I love the way he swings. He kind of goes for home runs all the time, and he's a great player for the game, great fielder as well. So, and Brian McCann, I've always loved him too. So I'm interested to see what happens with the Braves, but I do like when teams realize that they need to improve, and they don't just go, well, we made the playoffs last year. We have no, they're going, we want to go for it this year. We want to win the World Series. We think we're better than the Red Sox or whatever. We'll go for it and try to win. So I'm excited for that. Jared, stick with baseball. Do you care that there are rumors going around that Robinson Cano might be traded to the Yankees or Mets?
No, I do not care. And really, I don't care for two reasons. One, Cano's 36. And I know he's still a good talent, but at 36, what are you getting? Because you sign, obviously, you make a name for yourself with the Yankees, and then you sign a 10-year, $240 million deal with the Mariners, right? When you're still basically in your prime. Didn't work in part because you decided to cheat and take substances, and then you get banned for 80 games, right? As a part of the baseball's joint drug policy. So I think that drug ban still hangs over his head, at least in my book. So why would you want that type of player? Now, if it's the Yankees that are looking at him, they obviously have a history with him and they know the type of player he is. But if you're the Mets or any other team, you're trying to acquire a 36-year-old who has not finished his contract with the Mariners, so you would be taking on still a big chunk of that contract, and with the guy who's coming off a major suspension.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like the greatest idea to me unless you're very desperate at that position in the infield. So if it's the Yankees, I can kind of see it because of the history, but really I don't think this is a big deal, because even though I think he can still play, I think he's got 1 or 2 years left. I don't see this as a long-term solution for a team. So I would look elsewhere, and then later on, getting closer to the season, if he's still available, then I would trade him. But I would not give up the house, or I would not give up I think I saw in one rumored trade the Yankees would give up Jacoby Ellsbury and another player.
Who the hell wants Jacoby Ellsbury though?
Right. But it's like Jacoby Ellsbury, and then the Yankees would want cash back from the Mariners. So
Ellsbury's contract is big, and that would in a way, because people might say, oh well, if Robinson Cano gets traded to the Yankees, for example, they go, oh well, they can't sign each other. Well, no, if they throw Ellsbury in the deal, they're like only losing like $2-3 million. So it's not the contracts are about the same.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Ellsbury just has never done anything in New York. But so that would be a way of like creating that chance to go sign the big free agent, a la Bryce Harper, Manning-Child.
Okay.
So,
yeah. I see it. I just, like I said, because he's 36, if he were 30
and coming off steroids,
32,
and a lot of times we've seen when guys come off steroids, also they tend to play worse too.
They take a step back.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense for me. Nick, last question for you. Do you care? Tiger Woods got his first hole-in-one since 1998.
No, I don't care about that, but this is an excuse to talk about the Tiger versus Phil matchup this past Friday after Thanksgiving. I was unable to watch it because I was driving home from the great state of Arizona for the second day in a row. And so I was not able to watch it. Interestingly enough, though, the pay-per-view was like $20. They ended up just having to give it for free.
They did. They messed
because
up.
they screwed up the thing, and a lot of people, pay $20 for no reason when it was live on Bleacher Report, the website. So, but nonetheless, the match ended up being pretty good. They said the commentary was kind of boring. There wasn't much going on. They obviously threw a lot of money into it. It was $9 million for the winner, and there was a lot of prop bets and stuff like that. And Phil ended up dominating most of the event. Up until the very last thing. I actually predicted it pretty well. I said that I thought Phil would lead early, and then Tiger would come back. Tiger came back, but then they went into a fifth overtime in a way. And they actually said, screw it, we're creating a hole, and did a par 3 93 yards to see it won. So that's the one cool thing about it not being a legitimate event is you can create those cool rules. It doesn't have to be so legitimate, and it can kind of be fun. I hope stuff like this happens in the end, or more. Maybe a Jordan Spieth versus Rory McIlroy, someone like that. And some of these other stars can get into it from the realm of golf. But it seemed like it was fun. Phil obviously wanted to win, probably a little more than Tiger Woods in this event, and he gets his big win. But, I loved watching the promotion, the press conference. They even did a stare-off with each other like the UFC or boxing would do. So I loved the event. Although I wasn't able to watch it, I think it did good enough things. They obviously need to figure out the pay-per-view stuff. But I think it did good enough for the state of golf to where people were really interested. It was the number one trending thing the Friday after Thanksgiving on a day where people go out shopping most of the time. So I thought it was good, and I'm excited to see this kind of stuff happen more in the future. All right, we need to go to break, Jared. Coming back, final segment of the day. We're going to talk a little SoCal sports because I want to challenge Jared on a couple of teams here that he follows and see what he has to say about some interesting moves that a certain college football team is making, and a certain NBA team is number one in the NBA right now that a lot of people wouldn't have thought. So we're going to talk about those two things, a little SoCal sports. We're going to get a little personal right here on the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio.
All right, so you know the deal. Everyone is expecting Magic Johnson to land another marquee free agent to play alongside LeBron James. But is it possible that one or more superstars from that 2019 free agent class could actually be competing against him in the City of Angels? Yeah, that's right. The Clips making noise in the West. I'm not kidding. The NBA power rankings are out, and the Clippers move all the way up to 4th behind the Raptors, Bucks, and Warriors. Doc's crew off to a 13-6 start and have space to sign 2 max free agents next summer.
You beat the Spurs, you beat the Grizzlies, you won at Portland the other night, and of course, in that fateful game, you beat Golden State when they had their little incident. You beat them 121-116 in overtime. And that's a pretty great start for a team that I don't think a lot of people saw coming.
No, I don't think a lot of people saw it. I think we believed it. We're really deep. We can go as deep as 12, easy, on our team. And we don't have the quote-unquote star, but we have a lot of really good players.
So, Jared, as you know, there are 2 NBA teams that play in the Staples Center, correct? Right? One team has LeBron James. Another team's best player is Tobias Harris. But for some reason, as far as yesterday goes, so I know the Clippers didn't play, I'm looking at this, Jared, I have standings, right? Standings. So, I got Golden State number 2.
Oh.
And the Clippers number 1.
Oh, my God.
The Clippers number 1 in the West. They don't have the best record in the NBA. But they do have the second best record. Second best record. Third best record.
Third.
Yeah, Milwaukee.
Toronto, Milwaukee,
yeah.
then the Clippers.
But so, best in the West. And the West has been, this formidable foe. Jared, so first of all, I want you to answer this because obviously I've been following the Clippers this year because LeBron's been for me a little disappointing, and like I said, the Lakers are annoying to watch because they don't have a system. They just got blown out by the Nuggets last night, and I think they lost to the Magic the other night too. They've been annoying to watch, and the Clippers are fun to watch because it's a lot of guys playing really hard, and there's a system there, and they're beating teams. They beat Oklahoma City. They beat Houston twice. They beat Golden State. They're not like beating the Suns or the Dallas Mavericks or the Brooklyn Nets every game, right? They're beating these formidable teams and cementing themselves as the number 1 team. How has this happened with the Clippers? And are the Clippers better than the Lakers?
I mean, from the standings right now, yeah, the Clippers are better than the Lakers. How? I have no idea. I don't know if you want to give Doc Rivers all the credit in the world. He right now should be the coach of the year. You're right. When Tobias Harris is your best player, I wouldn't even put him in the category of top 25 best players in the league.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
So the fact that he is kind of willing this team, I mean, he just outdueled Damian Lillard in Portland a couple nights ago, right? They beat Portland 104-100.
Came back from like 15 in that game.
I think they're just getting solid contributions. I mean, obviously Harris is going off. Danilo Gallinari, I mean, the dude that just has been all over the place in the NBA. He dropped 17 a couple nights ago. They have consistent players. I mean, they have. I don't want to say they have a good mix of offense and defense because I think they're more of a defensive team.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When you have Avery Bradley and Patrick Beverley, guys that just harass other opponents, I think that's really good for their defense. But I'm just trying to figure out how this team really scores a lot of points because I can see them being a top defense and giving up at about 100 or just under 100 points a game. But the fact that they're able to score over 100 consistently really just surprises me. And I'm literally looking at their roster right now. And other than Tobias Harris,
Lou Williams is the one other guy.
Okay, Lou Williams, right. I did forget about Lou Williams. I would say is their best offensive scorer, pure scorer, guy that can maybe create his own shot, that type of thing. I really I have to give a lot of credit to Doc Rivers right now. He has put this team together, even though they're not full of stars, and that's what the NBA is today. And they're just saying, hey guys, we're going to play as a team, right? It doesn't matter if Tobias Harris gets 30 one night and then 10 the next night, right? This is a score by committee. And you know what? The thing about that is if you're an opponent, you can't just single out one player. For the Lakers, it's like, all right, we're going up against the Lakers and LeBron. Stop LeBron. If we lose, it's not going to be because of LeBron. Mm-hmm. With the Clippers, it's, who do we stop? Harris, Beverly,
Well, that's
Lou
the
Williams.
thing. That's the thing. And Doc Rivers went on Undisputed the other day and said, we're 12 deep. Like, literally anybody I put on the court is a solid player, including rookies like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jerome Robinson. So I think that's what it is. You're right. It's a good thing that you said right there is that who do you stop? Because Gallinari some games it's Boban and Gallinari. Some games it's the rookies and Tobias Harris. Some games Patrick Beverley goes off for 20 points. Sometimes Lou Williams scores 40. Right? So it's like with the Lakers, you're rarely getting those huge contributions from other players because LeBron takes over the game. And you're looking at, and I asked you a question, who's in better shape? I'm talking about not only this year, the Clippers got 2 max contract spots too. Why, if you're a star player, would you go to the... I'm asking this question. Why, if you're a star player, would you go with LeBron, who you know is the number one guy? He's going to take the ball, all that stuff. When you could go and be with your own team, a team that's solid. I don't know if they're going to keep this up. They're probably not going to end up number 1 in the West, but they'll probably make the playoffs. A team that can make the playoffs with that roster, why wouldn't a Kawhi Leonard or whoever else is a free agent next year say, I'm going to go to the Clippers? Because the Clippers they're in LA, but they're not, there's not this huge pressure to succeed, and I can play with all these really hard players. I mean, imagine the Clippers. Patrick Beverley, Avery Bradley, and Kawhi Leonard. That is one of the best defensive teams you could come up with, period, in the NBA. So I know defense doesn't necessarily win championships in the NBA anymore. It's more about scoring. But I'm asking you, why would a star pick the Lakers over the Clippers with LeBron? You know he's going to be the number one guy.
2 reasons. Yeah. Number one, in today's NBA, you have to have at least 2 stars. Right? You can't just be and I'm not comparing anyone to this guy, but you can't be a Michael Jordan, and just have a Scottie Pippen or have a role player and you be the one-man guy.
Yeah.
Because you're going to go up against the Warriors, you're going to go up against the 76ers, you're going to go up against the Boston Celtics, teams that have multiple superstars or multiple talented guys, right? So from that standpoint, if you're the Clippers now, you mentioned they do have 2 max contracts. So if you say, hey, I'll sign with you guys, but you also need to go and get Anthony Davis or Damian Lillard or another superstar to come join me, then that's one thing. So from this standpoint, if Kawhi Leonard were just to come to the Clippers, yes, that would be a great, fantastic court defensively. But what other guy, say Kawhi Leonard gets hurt, or say, you know what, I just don't have it these nights, what other super guy, is Tobias Harris going to keep this up?
Yeah, true, but who's number 1 team in the NBA right now? Toronto Raptors.
Right. Who
had Kawhi and Kyle Lowry? So Kawhi's already proven that he can kind of lead. Now, I know it's the East, and the East is still, besides the Celtics and the 76ers, and I'll throw Milwaukee in there, it's still a worse league than the West. It's still, Doc Rivers says in the West, it's tough every game. In the East, you can take games off sometimes and still win. So, I get that. But Kawhi Leonard's showing you that, hey, I can lead a team and be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference by myself, essentially, with a solid point guard. Why can't I come over to the Clippers, who have Tobias Harris, who's a very solid player, right? He's not an all-star, but he's very solid. And then if you add one more guy, you're looking at one of the best teams in the NBA right there, just based on the fact that the Clippers are good this year. I'm not just trying to, I'm not trying to juice them up and just say all the stuff, but I just think right now players are thinking, well, why can't I go run my own team essentially with the Clippers? If I go to the Lakers, I got to deal with all these rookies and LeVar Ball and LeBron James and all this stuff. So
because you have Magic Johnson
and you still have LeBron James, who right. has showed that he could lead. Oh my God, the one in 15 Cleveland Cavaliers who this year to the championship last year, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the NBA. But I just wanted to discuss that. I wanted to get your take on it because I know you're a Laker fan. You don't follow the Clippers as much. This is a story that all of the local sports radio stations are talking about here. The sports, the sports pages in the LA Times, OC Register. The USC Trojans football team. You look at UCLA this year. You look at the other team in SoCal as far as college sports goes, and UCLA was 3-9. Right? They were 3-9 under Chip Kelly's first year, barely beat anybody. But one of those wins came against USC. There was a chance UCLA wasn't going to make a bowl this year, was going to be kind of lowly because it's their first year, roster turnover, a lot of freshmen, right? People kind of give them a pass. You look at USC, Jared, the team that was ranked earlier in the year, I believe it was number 15.
To start the year?
Yeah, number 15. And they ended up going 5-7. Yes, you heard me right, 5-7, which means they ain't going to a bowl. And they lost to USC and Notre Dame. Also, finished the season losing 5 out of their last 6 games. Jared, give me real quick. We're going to talk about the fire sale of all the coaches. But why do you think, because I know you argued with me with this on Twitter, why do you think Clay Helton deserves to still be the USC coach? Because there is a lot of people that do not think he should be in command anymore.
Yeah, this one's tough, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I, approve or that I even like this move. Mm-hmm. But I think if you look at that athletic director, Lynn Swann, and the position that he's in, right? When Lynn Swann got hired as the athletic director for USC, he really had no prior experience as a director or in any level, right? Obviously, he played at USC. He made a name for himself in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? He's a player. We know that. But as far as a management role and an athletic director role, he's never really been in that type of situation before. So as a rookie, in this case, I think he's basically saying that I'm going to ride or die with Helton, right? if Helton, I'm not going to try to get another coach in here because I might not have that much time left. So instead of trying to bring in a brand new coach and somewhat rebuild, right? Because it takes a couple years, right? Because right now, these are all Clay Helton's players. So you bring in another coach, it's going to take a couple years to get that coach's players in, and then you never know. So I think this is really about Lynn Swann and him saying, if I'm going to go down swinging, I'm going down with the guy that I like, that I know, and we're going to try to revitalize this program. And I know that I mentioned this to you on Twitter a couple days ago. I'm not saying that Clay Helton is Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, but I think the situation is similar to where Brian Kelly the last 2 years, his seat was hot. I mean, he was like, I'm sure if you were a Notre Dame fan or if you were, if you go to Notre Dame, there were a lot of rumblings of Brian Kelly needs to go. This program is not where it needs to be. And guess what? All of a sudden this year, they come out, they beat Michigan in the beginning of the year, and now they're in the college football playoff. Yeah. Right? As far as we know.
And not playing Alabama in the first round.
Not playing Alabama. Yeah. So I think, I'm not sure, obviously Lynn Swann didn't base his decision off of that, but I'm just comparing that situation and saying, you never know. Give a guy one more opportunity, and I think that's what Lynn Swann is doing. Because if it does work out, then you know what? All these rumors and all these naysayers are going to have to shut up. Because USC has the talent. They can recruit, whether it's players or coaching. They can basically bring any player they want to Southern California. It's not about the talent. I think Clay Helton really needs to sit down and say, this is about the coaching. You mentioned the fire sale that we're going to get into in a minute. But there's going to be a new coaching staff as far as assistants go on this team next year. And really, this is This is all on the coach's shoulders. The talent is there. They have the players, regardless of whether the freshman quarterback should have played to finish out the year or not. This is about the coaching. So Clay Helton, all offseason, I don't want to hear about you taking vacations. I don't want to hear about you doing anything. But the only time you should be like not studying football is if you're with your family, if there's like a birthday or something like that. Other than that, your entire job is on the line, because you come out and you do anything but go like 4-1 or 5-0, you're getting fired.
Do we know this? Well, we probably don't know their schedule next year.
They start off at home against Fresno State.
Fresno State's ranked too. That's not an easy matchup.
It's not an easy matchup.
I mean, they didn't beat teams like Fresno State the last couple. Like I said, they lost 5 out of 6 games, and some of those teams weren't like world beaters, right? UCLA, for example,
no, not
right?
at all.
Like so. Okay, so I appreciate you saying that you're putting a target on Clay Helton's head. You're not behind him completely.
No. I'm not. I'm just trying to give an example as to why I think Lynn Swann kept him.
So now I'll give you an example. There's a couple things I want to say here. First of all, the USC is in a lot more trouble than people think they are, and it has nothing to do with the football program, right? The USC president resigned recently, which is the guy that would fire Lynn Swann. Lynn Swann would fire Clay Helton, so that it comes from literally the top at USC. Why? Because I think Lynn Swann should have been fired, first of all, because Swann has let Helton go too far with this stuff, and you're right. Now he's going to ride or die, which makes sense. And I think, yes, they're both going when they go. Obviously, we have this thing with the gynecologists at USC that is going to cost millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements. If you don't know the story, there was a USC gynecologist that took advantage of young women, similar to the U.S. gymnastics coach Larry Nassar that we've talked about in this program. Extremely similar situation. So USC is shelling out money, and I've heard from people on Twitter that are inside the USC program that they've said that they've essentially told every USC program to cut costs because there's even more settlements coming. So USC is already can't just throw money around, which is why they might not go and hire a coach like Pete Carroll, right, for example, and go throw $10 million at a coach, or Les Miles, who just signed with, who was it, Kansas the other day. Yeah, so it makes sense. The problem is with if he doesn't go 4-1, 5-0 next year, they've already done this with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin had a year where the USC made the Sun Bowl. Okay, I think it was the year where they were supposed to be number one. It was supposed to be the return of the USC dynasty, right? Matt Barkley and all that. Lane Kiffin doesn't do well, doesn't get fired after the season, and then gets fired on the tarmac at Sky Harbor after the ASU game. I don't want to see that again. Now, I'm more of a UCLA fan than USC anyways, but I want USC to be good as well because I like the rivalry to be, I don't
relevant.
Exactly. I don't want the Seahawks to do well, but it's nice when they're 11-2 and you beat them if you're the Cardinals, right? That's kind of cool. You don't want USC to be 5-7 and have this, it just sucks. And to have this year not have a team from LA even be in any bowl is it's terrible, right? So I think there's a lot of things to unpack. I don't think they should have kept Helton because you don't need another tarmac situation. I don't know who they play at the beginning of the season next year, or we obviously know they're going to play Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to be good.
USC?
Yeah.
Oh, they open at home against Fresno State.
Well, no, but I'm saying we know they're going to play Notre Dame later in the year.
Okay.
UCLA will be better. U of A will be better. ASU is going to be better. These are all teams they play in the conference. Obviously, Utah, Washington. These are all teams they might play next year, and they're not gonna. Or I don't know if they can beat them. And a lot of those games are going to be like, well, if they don't start the right quarterback, USC's losing those games. So here's one thing they can do. The offense obviously had a lot of problems this year. I wouldn't put all the blame on the defense. The defense had some injuries, stuff like that. And USC didn't tend to get blown out in a lot of these games. The offense needs to hire Cliff Kingsbury.
Ooh.
Yeah, the Texas Tech head coach. Now, there's a lot of NFL teams that want him because the NFL style is starting to turn into more of that Texas Tech style that Cliff Kingsbury obviously created and started. But I think USC, you need to throw money at this guy because he's the way to attract the same recruits. He's the way to keep the offense rolling, and he will be the one that chooses the right quarterback because I thought Jack Sears should have been the quarterback at USC the last couple of weeks. JT Daniels is good, but he's a true freshman. And honestly, following high school football because my brother plays high school football in the same division that JT Daniels. He played JT Daniels last year in games. JT Daniels had a team where nothing ever bad happened to him. He didn't get sacked. Marday has been dominant the last couple of years. He doesn't get hit. That didn't happen this year. And the kid wasn't ready to have big losses, right? He wasn't ready to lose to ASU or wherever he wasn't ready to lose to UCLA. Jack Sears was the older kid. He came in the one game he played and really played well, and I believe got them a win. So, nonetheless, there's a lot of problems here with USC. I think they need to go out and sign Cliff Kingsbury. I still think they should just fire Clay Helton, but Lynn Swan's not gonna. You're right, because there's no president to fire Lynn Swan. So there's a lot more problems with USC. This is not just an issue with sports. This is an issue with the whole university, and that's why this kind of debacle can happen, and that's why UCLA is in a little better shape, even though they were 3-0.
I'll say one thing, because I know we do need to transition a little bit. For Cliff Kingsbury, if he's getting looks in the NFL, obviously it's an assistant, probably not as a head coach. Maybe
offensive coordinator. Yeah.
Why would he pass that up to go to USC as an offensive coordinator? And I think
might have more control.
I think there's only one reason. It's not even about the control, because when you make a name for yourself in the NFL for 1 year, and then you can get all the control you want being a head coach. So I think he would take that job if he had a good hunch that he would be in line to be the head coach when Clay Helton leaves.
Oh, that's an interesting take on it too.
So if I were Cliff Kingsbury, I would not go to USC as the quarterbacks coach or offensive coordinator unless I had a very good feeling that I would get a legitimate shot at being the head coach whenever Clay Helton leaves, whether that's next year or the year after, because you're coming off of it being a head coach, right, at a major football program. So if you're going to go to an offensive coordinator position, or let's say even a quarterbacks coach, which is even a lesser position, why would you do that and kind of put yourself in a hole for a couple years? Unless you had if you're going to do that, then you might as well go to the NFL. You'll probably make a little more money, and you have a better opportunity to become a coach sooner. In college, it's like quarterback coach in college.
It's not.
Quarterback coaching in the NFL, okay, that's a little better. So if USC would obviously have to throw some dollars at him, but if that scenario were to work, then I can see Cliff Kingsbury saying, all right, I'll take the spot for a year or two.
Exactly.
Then I'm going to take over the head coach spot.
Yeah, he goes, pay me head coach money and I'll go. Because then you just switch it and make it easier for everybody.
Backload his contract.
True.
And say, okay, the first year or two, we're going to pay you coordinator
money. But they're not going to do that, Jared. They're not going to do that because he's going to leave. This is like, if you sign Cliff Kingsbury, max, he's there for 3 years. Right? Unless he becomes the head coach at USC. But, again, like you said, I think that's the only way he does come. I did hear some rumor that said the other day he was on USC's campus. Why, in any other reason, would he be on USC's campus, right? Might have been someone that looked like him, you never know. But I'm saying, if he actually was on the campus, are we really going to sit here and say that, he's going to sign with USC, barring some NFL team throwing money at him? I don't really have an NFL team that could. So I don't know. Maybe the Bengals could help him out, but the Bengals, Hue Jackson's over there. Hue Jackson. I'm sorry, I had to take a shot again. I'm sorry, but yeah, USC has it's not right to just talk crap on them completely and just say all this stuff, because there's issues at the top of the USC management that has nothing to do with sports. That is in turmoil right now, and that is why Lynn Swan, who really shouldn't have been in that position in the first place, is still leading. By the way, he's the athletic director. He's not just the football director, too. You don't even hear about any of this stuff. It's just kind of ridiculous. You have a football guy running everything. So, I don't know. But, yeah, we need to transition, but it will be interesting to see what USC does. They just fired a lot of their coaches, too. So they're obviously going to start over. But I think the only way they can help their program is getting a guy like Kingsbury, right? Or bringing back Pete Carroll. All right. Just real quick, I'll just give you a final thought. You got like 30 seconds left. Anything else you want to mention real quick?
It's tough. There's not really much going on. This game tomorrow night with Cowboys.
It was big.
Big time game, man. And like I said, as a Cowboys fan, I think they're going to be competitive. If the Cowboys win this game, then they can legitimately be on the map, right? Or if they can at least stay competitive. If they get blown out, then they're just a 6-6 Cowboys team. So we'll see. Big game tomorrow night. Where I'll be.
Absolutely, and I agree with you on that. As you hear the music right there, Enter Sandman is playing, not Christmas music, but still, our ending of the show. I am excited about that game too. I agree with you exactly. Although I still think they can win the NFC East, even if they lose this game. Hopefully they don't get blown out, but even if they lose, I think they're still in a good position. Hey, we'll be back next week talking more football. We'll be talking about the college football Final Four. We'll do a full prediction on who we think is going to end up winning and do all that stuff. And then, of course, NFL and the winter meetings are coming up as well, coming up soon for the MLB, so we'll talk about them soon. For Nick Neenan,
I'm Jared Smith.
This has been the Coverage 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio.